Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. I hope you've all had a magnificent Monday so far. Today we're going to be diving into our daily cryptocurrency market update, and we're going to be doing a number of things in this video. We are going to be looking at the Bitcoin chart. We're going to be looking at the life history of, or the life cycle of Bitcoin, and talking about potentially a super cycle taking place. We know that Bitcoin has largely followed a 4-year cycle theory centered around the halvening to date. And in actual fact, the structure that we're currently seeing for Bitcoin, we're not seeing a typical kind of sharp decline into a bear market. Instead, we're actually kind of holding a position, and we're rage bound, potentially leading to what is going to be an extended cycle. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to be getting into a number of the top articles related to the cryptocurrency market, also talking a little bit about what's taking place in regards to global events, geopolitical events, macroeconomics, and everything else, because it all factors into the cryptocurrency market. And one thing that we are really going to be stressing from the start of the video, and we're going to start off with some of the news articles related to the cryptocurrency market, is that, and it's one thing that we've stressed continuously on this channel, is that despite the price action, adoption continues. Growth continues. Expansion of crypto continues. This is already the most or the fastest adopted technology to date. Now, we know that that's because we live in more of an accessible world, given things like the internet and a number of other things, but we're certainly heading and continuing to head in the right direction, regardless of what the price is doing and the markets are doing, which we know is largely correlated to geopolitical, macroeconomic, and of course monetary policy within the United States. Certainly March 2020 saw a lot of liquidity added to markets, and of course they all benefited greatly as a result of it, and we're coming to the sort of other end of that, or going through the other end of that currently. This article reads, no more 4-year cycle theory, 5 things to know about Bitcoin. But we will be getting into that when we look at the sort of life cycle. Traders bet on ETH2 staking after the ETH2 upgrade. So there is going to be, lots of you Ethereum fans out there will probably know that you're essentially going to reduce once ETH2 is launched and they move away from proof of work. There will be a 90% reduction in the issuance of Ethereum. So there'll be quite a big supply crunch. Mix that up with the fact that people will be staking their ETH to earn passive income or rewards. You know, it's quite a perfect storm that's setting up for Ethereum, but we'll talk about that. So let's really get into it, and then we'll look at our traditional markets. Let's take a look at the overall crypto market. Kind of flat today, and we did see a pump on Saturday. Usually gets killed off on a Sunday, but we actually held quite well, and we are seeing a bit of a move to the upside across the board. We know what the story is for Bitcoin. We are very range bound at the moment. We are ultimately set up in what I would call a rising triangle, which typically would break to the upside. I don't think this is a symmetrical triangle necessarily. I do think we are going to get a break to the upside, which would take us above, and hopefully we can hold above this sort of halfway point of the range, a significant level, and then start to climb. And we are setting up, in my opinion, on a macro time frame structure that would potentially lead us to believe that we're going to see continuation. And I really do want to talk and stress about the fact that I actually think, people go, okay, well, what about the super cycle? This structure that we're currently seeing for Bitcoin could potentially be the precursor to a super cycle. We've not seen, like 2017 going into 2018, a sharp decline into the bear market, or 2013 to 14, sharp decline. We're not seeing that. We're actually holding up relatively well, given everything that's taking place. Let's dive into some of the articles. FTX launches crypto exchange services in Australia. FTX is hoping to get ahead of the regulatory curve by appeasing policymakers and working proactively with regulators. Sam Bankman-Fried is doing an amazing job, ladies and gentlemen. He is really at the forefront of expansion of cryptocurrency exchanges, and he's very regulatory friendly. For example, in the UK, unless you're a company, you can't trade perpetual futures. So he's on board with regulators and ultimately trying to appease them in whatever way possible to drive FTX as an exchange and kind of permit it. But the reason I bring this up is because this furthers the global expansion of crypto. Because if FTX it's a good exchange. One thing that I like about FTX is they actually do quite well in periods of extreme volatility, where you might see the likes of Coinbase and a number of other exchanges struggle. FTX typically tend to do quite well. This is another one. FTX continues global expansion, creates a unit in Australia. So this is really, again, the main takeaway from this news is global expansion. It continues. Crypto users in Africa grew by 2,500% in 2021. I expect this to grow significantly more this year. And this is a trend that we are seeing continue. Again, one reason we remain significantly bullish on the crypto space is because we pay attention to the macro. We pay attention and understand what this is. This is a technological revolution, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to change the entire world as we know it. And there's a lot of value that has to come from that. And at a $1.8 trillion market cap, we have a long way to go. We're going to get to the tens and potentially into the future, the hundreds of trillions. So a couple of interesting articles. This one's talking about no more 4-year cycle theory. So what I have here, the green lines that we have are when the halvenings take place. And they cause a supply shock, which there is going to be an element of that still present moving forwards because it's in Bitcoin's code every 4 years. The supply, the distribution of Bitcoin halves, the rewards half. I think the next one is 2024. This undoubtedly is going to cause a supply shock, which should see the price increase. Basic supply and demand sort of dictates this. And we've been driven, moven's not a word, being driven by this to date. But we are now a more mature market where the fundamentals for Bitcoin aren't really, and we've seen this over the past, certainly a couple of months. We've been very tethered to macroeconomics. In fact, we've been quite tethered to the likes of the NASDAQ and the markets generally. And the reason being is because we've got a lot of the same actors there. This kind of pullback that we've seen for Bitcoin is strategic. It's not a kind of panic capitulation return move that we saw previously. This is structured selling, potential structure bottoming structure here before we get that continuation. And this is not, there is still the absolute potential for further downside. But when you give a macro view of everything, we're only going one way, ladies and gentlemen, and that is up. And all the expansion that we're seeing is really gives credibility to this. I could go on for days about everything that's happening within the crypto space. Coinbase, for example, double their workforce. Why would they be doing that if they thought that this was going to be a dying industry or an industry that had reached its peak? They're trying to accommodate what's about to come. Same with a lot of your big sort of fund managers that are all moving towards trying to get a Bitcoin ETF approved. So I think now that Bitcoin, this potentially is the super cycle. I don't think we have traditional cycles anymore, the 4-year cycle theory that we previously had. I think we have shorter pullbacks. We move more like your sort of stock markets now, I think, guys. Or the likes of Apple, which we showed you, and I'll do that very quickly again because it is important. What have we got down here? Let's bring it up. What are we on? We're on a daily. Let's change it to a weekly. Bear with me, guys. I should have maybe done this prior, but hey-ho. This was 2000. Oh, this was your .com boom. What we'll do is we'll do the same thing for Bitcoin. Take the volume off. Volume always gets in the way. Can you see there's a lot of similarity here? And you're essentially, can you see where Apple is? I'll take it off auto. So this is your .com boom. This is where I think Bitcoin currently is. And you can see the structure is very similar. This is 2017, where Bitcoin currently is. There is the possibility of more downside, but only for us to continue on the back end of that. And we all know what the story was for Apple. And that's the sort of growth that I think Bitcoin is now going through. And there's going to be ups and downs within that. But ultimately, I'm net long on the crypto space. So let's finish this off. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ actually saw quite a nice little uptick last week. It has been falling. This is bear market territory, and we're now actually calling this, or we are definitely at 20% down is a bear market in your traditional markets. That's how they define it. But we saw a kind of spike back up, and I think that's, I think there is still, with everything that's going on a kind of geopolitical scale, definitely the possibility of more downside. Which is why it's always important on the short term, which is why it's always important to keep that long-term vision in mind and kind of go off of that, which is what we try and do on this channel. Oil, we saw, this is not what I want. We don't want oil futures. Anyway, we'll leave that there. But oil seen a kind of a return move to the downside for after the kind of run up that it had with a lot of other things. It's very typical when you get a big parabolic move like that. They do typically pull back, but I ultimately think that you are going to see continuation for your commodities, and that's certainly something to pay attention to in regards to economies as a whole and how that may factor into the crypto space. So that's really all I have for you in this video, guys. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. If you've enjoyed this content, a like is always appreciated. So is a comment, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next YouTube video. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your Mondays, and I'll catch you all in the next one.